Hello beautiful people, and welcome to another video, which is again some kind of hybrid going on over here. I'm going to be predominantly focusing on the full moon in Gemini, which if you are watching this on Thursday, which is the day I'm going to release this, it's happening later on tonight, or if you are in Europe and further, it's happening on Friday morning for you. For me here in Mexico, it's still happening on Thursday night, and this full moon in Gemini, it's happening on 13 degrees and 3 minutes, which is the second decan of Gemini, which is Libra, all about balancing, and is the Aries degree. So we're going into new direction. Also paying attention to the numbers. 13, of course, is the death card in the tarot, which is all about death and rebirth. And we actually know that this moon is very aspected. It is squaring and squared by the lunar nodes. So the sun and the moon being in opposition, of course, because it's a full moon, they are both squaring the lunar nodes. The sun, exact sun square to the lunar nodes, is happening on Friday on the 5th, but it's already in effect. So we have the grand mutable cross in the sky for this full moon in Gemini. And also Mars is still technically squaring the nodes, resolution the south node. Venus is also squaring the nodes, coming into the square. Obviously the exact square will be happening the following week, but it's already in effect. So everything passing through the sign of Sagittarius is squaring the lunar nodes, creating the what we call skip step and pointing to the south node now as a resolution, unlike in Gemini season when everything squaring the lunar nodes was pointing to the north node in Pisces. So it's saying, okay, now we have the opportunity to put into practice what we've learned since the new moon in Gemini, which was the beginning of this cycle that we are now celebrating the midpoint of. And the new moon in Gemini took place on May 26th, and that was on 6 degrees and 6 minutes of Gemini, which is the Virgo degree, 6 degrees. Virgo house, and also it is the balance, right? Interesting enough, this is happening on Libra decan, which is all about balancing, right? So 6 naturally is the number associated with Venus, and it's all about balance and harmony and peace. So the new moon in Gemini, in fact, was actually the first lunation with Saturn in the sign of Aries. So this was a whole new experience for us, with Neptune at the time already present in the sign of Aries for some time already on that 1 degree 46 minutes at the time. But Saturn was on the anuretic 0 degree. So we had these 6 months, whatever it is, since May to experience, well, not technically until now, because of course Saturn is back in Pisces, but we had the opportunity to experience these new energies, Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, and until recently, last month, we had Uranus in the sign of Gemini, and we will be revisiting all of these energies next year in 2026 when all these planets move back into these signs. And actually the new moon in Gemini in 2026 will be taking place quite late on the 14th of June 2026, and that will be on 24 degrees of Gemini, which it's the Aquarian decan, but it's actually the Piscean degree. So again, something will end. And that will be actually the final lunation with Chiron in the sign of Aries. Chiron will be on 29 degrees 48 minutes of Aries. And Chiron, if you are unaware, is the key between Saturn and Uranus. So Chiron is an asteroid. The way it is in the sky, it's between the planet of Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn is the manifested reality we are experiencing, and Uranus is the going beyond. Both rulers of Aquarius. The Saturn, it creates a structure, and then the Uranus comes and wants to okay, well, let's upgrade it now, because what used to be once the new thing eventually will reach its expiry date, which is what we're experiencing now, especially since Pluto moved fully into the sign of Aquarius last November, a year ago. So now we know that, okay, we have to go beyond this experience, because for many of us, this past experiences no longer resonate with who we are right now, who we are becoming, or the potential of us, what we want to become. So with Gemini as an archetype, it's all about the choice, right? As I already mentioned, I mentioned in a previous video, because it's my third take. Gemini as the third house is connected with neighbors, communication, all that with the in the traditional astrology, right? Like also our early education and stuff. That's like technically it's the program, it's the software that we are being all programmed with, especially in our early years. Between the age of 0 and 7, those are the most dominant years when the program gets set in our mind. So now with this new moon in Gemini, which we experience in springtime with Saturn on that anuretic 0 degrees of Aries, and as I mentioned, everything that was passing through the sign of Gemini throughout springtime was squaring the lunar nodes pointing to the north node in Pisces as a resolution, and Neptune already at the time being in Aries, which was saying that, okay, there are things that we have to release, or we have to understand, okay, what holds a meaning, what doesn't, we want to take into these next cycles of our evolution, because with all of these energies slowly coming online, with the Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, there is a whole new reality being created, whole new reality being built, which you are the creator of, right? This is no longer about like, oh, they're creating this reality, I don't enjoy it, I don't want this, which is like, okay, well, but now with Saturn, Neptune in Aries, which at the moment is not the case, but we're going to be experiencing this soon enough. Neptune is moving back into Aries in January, Saturn in February, so not so long from now, and there is this opportunity to become conscious about how we create in reality, becoming the conscious creator of the reality that we wish to experience. And also with Uranus briefly being the sign of Gemini already this year and moving back into sign of Gemini at the end of April next year, we have the opportunity to choose, like, okay, well, what do you want this to look like for you? So going back to this new moon in Gemini, which seeded this full moon we are experiencing at the moment, which is the midpoint full moon, sun in opposition with the moon, we can now revisit the choices, right? Like, okay, well, back in May, I knew what I knew. Now I know more, because between May and now, we had all of this energy present, right? We had all of these experiences that we've experienced, accumulated. We also had the opportunity to embody these experiences through lived experience, through lived gnosis, as my husband would say. And this is all now giving us an opportunity with the square, from at least, from the sun being in the sign of Sagittarius, square to the south node, which is the resolution node, from the point of the moon being in the sign of Gemini, is square to the, the resolution node is the north node. So the square to the south node as a resolution is saying that, okay, now we have to put it into practice. Okay, we had these new energies present with us for these months, springtime, summertime, whatever we had with these planets in the new signs. And now them being all back in the old signs, Saturn now being direct, Neptune is soon to be stationed in direct the following week on December 10th. And then Uranus is still retrograde until next year, and so is Chiron, and so is Jupiter, right? Jupiter will station direct last on March 10th, which will be after the eclipse season. So there are still things we are processing, right? With Neptune is like, well, okay, what holds a meaning? With Jupiter, like, okay, what are the stories? What are the stories we want to create? Obviously, the next lunation in row will be the new moon in Sagittarius again on 28 degrees, just like the few past lunations, and this will be the case until the new moon in Pisces. So the first lunation that will not be on 28 degrees will be actually the new moon in Aries. So, and then the degrees will start moving. So what is all of this about, especially with this mutable cross being present in the sky? It's saying that, okay, well, what do you want to change? What realizations you have now, 6 months later, since this new moon in Gemini in May, that you can put into practice? Like, okay, well, this is how I always done things, this is what I thought I was, especially now with Jupiter in Cancer retrograde, this is who I believed I were, this is how I lived my life, especially now with this Uranus being back in a sign of Taurus. And I might have used this last time when I recorded my video, I don't remember, but when you feel like I invested so much into this, I waited so much for this, I don't know, with regards to career, for example, you've done the education, you've done the career, like with doctors, this is the best example, you've gone to school for so many years, and, you open the practice, and you do this, and, you invest yourself, that's your identity, and then, eventually you might realize that, I didn't, this is not quite what I thought it would be, or I don't feel the way I thought I would feel, and I want change. Or I outgrown this, I'm not the same person that invested all this time, effort, money, into this direction, into this path all these years ago. It doesn't have to be many years, it doesn't matter, the point is with this Uranus being on these final degrees of Taurus and currently retrograde, which is creating the acceleration, we are starting to realize and recognize that actually that the reality that I've created and the foundation on which this reality is built, it is not necessarily in alignment with who I am now, with my current needs and values, because for many of us, this reality have been created through the limitations that were projected onto us with regards to our identity. This is who you are. So, like when I was a kid, for example, I can give you an example. When I was a kid and I wanted to learn to play an instrument, and my parents said, well, no, we have no musicians in our family, so just forget about that. You can't be a musician, we don't have it in our blood or something like that. So then the story goes like, okay, well, I don't have any talent for music because we don't have any musicians in our family or something like that, where somebody else's stories, somebody else's limitations are being projected onto you, and then you decide, oh yeah, okay, that's not me then, and then you let go of your dreams, that you let go of your visions, because you think like, well, that's there for someone else, that's not there for me. But why? Just because somebody else said so. So going back to this, Uranus, why am I even talking about Uranus? Okay, let me have a look at what's going on with Uranus. Okay, Uranus, where are you? In Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, well, obviously still being in trine with Pluto, out of sign, opposition with Venus. Oh yeah, Gemini, of course. So, okay, Uranus is in opposition with Mercury, and Mercury, of course, is the ruler of this full moon, right? So this is where I see the Uranus. And then also last lunation, we had Uranus as a very active participant in opposition with the new moon in Scorpio, right? New moon in Scorpio was opposed by Uranus. So again, because I'm tapping into Uranus here, what's going on with Uranus? Uranus is in opposition, well, coming into opposition with Mercury is coming into opposition with Uranus. It's not exact for a few more days after. So in any case, opposition, just like the full moon, is an illumination of something. Mercury now post-retrograde, we had Mercury retrograde until recently, is giving us more wisdom, more clarity, especially as it started its retrograde in a sign of Sagittarius, which is again about the belief system. Jupiter is retrograde, right? Mercury was recently retrograde, started in Sagittarius, now back in a sign of Scorpio. So we dig in really deep, into our unconscious, into our shadow, to realize, like, what is this program? What are these stories? Again, we go into this program, the initial upbringing, the initial, childhood programming that say, this is who you are, this is where you came from, this identity that sets in, and then they say, okay, this is my purpose, this is my authentic expression. But is it really, or is it just based on somebody else's projection or somebody else's limitations? So going back to Uranus, right? Going back to Uranus being retrograde on these final degrees of Taurus, getting ready to go back into Gemini next year, but already have been in Gemini this year, ruled by Mercury. So this Uranus is saying, okay, well, there are other timelines available. You like, for example, someone like me, again, an example, personal example, like there was a time in my life when I used to work in optician, and I had girlfriends, female friends that we were like a group of, and we were all single at the time. This is going back many years ago. And we called ourselves the undateables. We said like, well, I'm not really lucky with relationship, not really lucky with guys. So, we are the undateables, we can't get a date or something like that. And now actually all of us are married, almost all of us, to my knowledge. I'm not keeping in touch with all these people anymore. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that this is the belief system that we chose, or that we thought that, well, this is how it is, this is the truth. And for many years that was the case. That was the case because I believed even about myself that, well, I'm not really good with relationship. I don't have much luck, or I don't know how to do relationships and stuff. And then it becomes like the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So going back to Mercury as the former and upcoming ruler of Uranus, being in opposition with Mercury at the moment, and also Mercury being the ruler of this full moon that is squaring the lunar nodes, right? One pointing, the sun pointing to the south node, and the moon pointing to the north node in Pisces. So it's saying this identity, this label, like it's outdated now, we can let it go. It's kind of like, it's kind of kept us in a box, it kept us safe, but come on, Saturn is now direct in Pisces. So it's saying like, well, it's time to move on, and also Saturn, Neptune, what are they doing? Oh yeah, there is still this grand water trine, right? Like we had the grand water trine present for the new moon in Scorpio. Well, now we don't have a new moon in Scorpio, but Mercury is kind of not far off on the 22 degrees 50 minutes. So we still have this grand water trine formed in the sky, and it's still in kite because Mercury is in this opposition with Uranus. So like, this is divinely orchestrated, divinely guided. Again, let's not get confused that, oh yeah, trine, that's gonna be easy. No, like in the evolutionary astrology, like I'm sure I mentioned this before, it just means that your soul is ready for it. It just means that, oh yeah, I'm ready for this change, like I'm in alignment, right? But it doesn't mean it's gonna be easy, because just because the soul is ready, the human still has to catch up, especially the human mind, right? The program that says that, but let me tell you all my stories and all my limitations, why I can't do it, why this is not me, why this is not possible. And then we go into the archive of the past because somebody said that, because somebody told me that, because this is what I heard at school, or this is whatever. So again, going back to Uranus, because Uranus is very important, because Uranus is the ruler of Pluto, and that's what it's all about, the evolution going forward, and of course Uranus as the modern ruler of Aquarius, and we are in the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius is about breaking the pattern, about going beyond. And this is again, and I'm repeating myself, but it's very important to understand how this sounds very good on a paper. It sounds fantastic. Like, yeah, we're going beyond, we're breaking the pattern, we're going into this age of Aquarius, and everything's gonna be fantastic because we're all gonna be equal and free and stuff. But let me remind you, especially with Jupiter in Cancer, now retrograde, just how emotionally attached we are to the past, to the old way of being, to the ancestor lineage, even though it might have not been easy, even though it might have been traumatic or it created a lot of suffering, but that's what we know, right? Isn't it the saying, better the devil, So that's what I mean. So with Jupiter now being connected to every single nation until the end of next year, 2026, because it's ruled by the moon, so, connected to every single nation, everything is amplified. So you might have noticed how the astrology is very amplified right now. It's like quite literal. Like yesterday, I'm recording this on Monday evening, so yesterday, Monday, it was not an easy day at all. Like, not an easy day, not in the slightest. And then my husband says, like, well, yeah, moon was conjunct Chiron. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense, but still, like, it's a lived life, lived experience. Like, it's fantastic to have the excuse or the explanation through the lens of astrology. So that's why I'm not even recording this with the chart, because it's not even relevant, I can tell you a million things that, Pluto sextile Venus, and, there are all these things, all these trines, all these things that are great. Like I said, there is the grand water trine formed in the sky, like obviously Saturn, Neptune are in conjunction, and Neptune is gonna station direct, and there are all these things, all these mind things we can focus on and dissect one by one and say, like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? But how does it feel? Especially with Mercury being in Scorpio on that 22 degrees, which is Capricorn degree, and also being on the Scorpio, Pisces, Cancer, Cancerian decan of Scorpio. It's saying, but how does it feel? How does it feel in my life? In my matrix, in this world that I'm living? How does it feel? How has my life felt and have been experienced by me since May, since this Saturn 0 degrees of Aries on the new moon in Gemini? What have I gone through? What have I experienced? What have I realized? Now, what am I clear about, with this Mercury post-retrograde? Like, what are my new realization? What am I digesting? Like all of these things. So how is your life? How are you living life? How are you experiencing life? So even yesterday, going through challenging day for myself and also my husband, and then him pointing out, like, well, it was moon conjunct Chiron, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's great, that makes sense now, but still, we had to go through what we had to go through, and nobody tells you, like, oh yeah, don't worry about it and just do this and this and you'll be fine. Actually, no, you just have to sit with all the emotions, you have to listen to all the thoughts in your mind, you have to be present with all these stories and with this ego telling you things that, well, let me just tell you everything that's on my mind, because you haven't been listening lately, so I need to just spit it out, so you have to be present with all of that and all the feelings and emotions attached to it. And once it's done, then finally you think, oh, finally it's quiet, for a moment it's quiet, and then next round, and then eventually it gets spent, that thought process over there, and then you go like, okay, now what have I learned? What have I realized? What is the status I'm experiencing at the moment after all of that? So with the full moon in Gemini, as it is full moon, which is illumination, right? You might have a lot of much more clarity, maybe not full understanding, but much more clarity about what's been going on since May, or like what's been going on this year, this year number 9 that we are coming into culmination of. I mean, technically, this is the final full moon. Yeah, this is the final full moon, because the next full moon will be the one in Cancer. That's already January. So this is the final full moon of 2025. So here we go, final full moon. And yeah, the next lunation will be the new moon in Sag on 28 degrees, like 28, right? Number 10, which is the next year we're entering into in a minute. So what have I learned about this year? What have I learned about the timelines that I'm have experienced and observe other people experiencing, and what timelines do I wish to choose for myself, which again all sounds great. Timelines, yeah, that would be great. Like how do I choose? Is there a catalog or something? And then, as the law of attraction, manifestation, and all these things go, which again for me, for anybody and everyone is just a theory until we learn how to like embody it, how to bring it into everyday reality, everyday life. South Node in Virgo. How do I bring it into lived experience of my life, Oh, you have to feel it. You have to feel it. You have to become a frequency match to that energy, frequency match to that sense of feeling, that you would have, which you had everything that, it's in that timeline, that, in that reality that you wish to have, in your experience. But, there is this program, there is that ego, there are those thoughts, there are these stories that tells you, but let me tell you why you can't have it. And let me tell you why this is a BS and you're just talking porkies and telling lies to yourself. Let me just tell you, because I have the evidence. Let me just bring all these stories and all these, from the archive, because ego mind is the archive of the past, and it's very useful, for certain things, very useful, everyday mundane things, but not so much for manifesting different type of life that goes beyond your current experience. So that's what I'm saying. So with all these squares present in the sky currently, and involving the lunar nodes, which is always about, destiny, but you don't want to understand it in a way that, oh, well, it is done then, I have no choice, like, it's destiny at play, what can I do, it's all decided already. Not really, because it's Gemini, it's Gemini, so it's about choice, and also it's air energy, right? Like fire and air in opposition, so things can move very quickly, like even though, just like yesterday, have to go through all this process, the feelings, the thoughts, the limiting beliefs, blah, blah, blah. But it was a day, before it might have been a week, so things are moving quickly, and you even yourself can observe how you are dealing with situations in a different way, perhaps like, oh yeah, maybe I would be more explosive, maybe I would be more impatient, maybe I would, I don't know, it would take me a week to get over that or whatever. So observe how you grown, how have you grown, because we don't really take time to give ourselves credit with regards to the changes that are actually happening, in us and in our environment, which is always like in competition with something and someone, some comparison, and then we bring ourselves down. But actually, how far you've come, how much you've achieved, how much you've improved the former version of yourself, even though it's, like you already whole, you already healed, you already perfect, the spirit is perfect, it's all exactly as it is, everything just is what it is. But yeah, with the Scorpio Mercury in opposition with Uranus, and this is not yet full opposition, so it's still on that Virgo side, coming out of the quincunx, is the lived experience. And as I said, all these squares from Sagittarius pointing to the South Node in Virgo, with the ruler, Mercury being in Scorpio, it just has to be experienced. There is no shortcut in like, oh yeah, I'll just do some meditation and then it's all cleared. Things can move much faster, but still, very likely life will offer you a situation, a person, a circumstance that will allow you to have that feeling, the feeling that needs to be released or transformed or transmuted or whatever it is, you know. Life will very likely offer you to that, because just having it in the head with the theory, like, oh yeah, you know, this is what, you know, like whatever is the information, it's just like, oh yeah, you know, I understand, you know, I understand in my mind, I understand how things are, I understand what this means, right? But until we really have the experience, just like me talking to you about astrology, talking to you about transits, like, yeah, we understand, you know, it makes sense. Yep, perfect, makes sense. Yeah, I get it. But until we actually are offered by life, you know, by this Virgo, human journey, hero's journey, embodiment of the spirit into physical form, an opportunity to go through a situation with someone in your environment, your boss, your partner, your child, whoever, or person on the street, it doesn't matter, an opportunity to bring that feeling to life, you know. Everything is just a theory, and then it's easy, you know, it's just an information, it comes and goes, right? But when it actually becomes personal through the experience, we become intimate with it, right? Scorpio, intimate with it, not the same thing, right? You know, it's easy to talk about astrology, but like I said a few times, you know, when it lands on my doorstep or slaps me in the face, I'm like, oh, so this is what it feels like, that moon conjunct Chiron. You know, yeah, it's easy to say, oh, Chiron is the key, you know, key between Saturn and Uranus. You're going from what was to the potential what could be. But nobody tells you how it will feel when the universe gives you an opportunity to feel it. And it is not an easy one. It is not a comfortable one. It is emotionally charged one and jarring one when you start questioning everything. So, yeah, Chiron is the key, but nobody said it was going to be simple key. You know, it's kind of like all like in a riddles, and that's again, it's just like a theory, right? It's just like, and also I have to catch myself. Well, it doesn't have to be difficult either, you know, it's just because in my experience this is how it was experienced, but it doesn't have to be difficult. It just, like I keep saying, and I know I said that before, that the level of difficulty, or it's not even the level of difficulty, how it will feel, like whether it's hard or not, depends on our resistance to change, right? So with regards to like mind, you know, the belief system, like my husband calls it the hubris, right? Something that we think this is the truth, this is the ultimate truth. And then by polarity, that will always create the nemesis, you know, something that will challenge that, because truth is ever changing, right? Unless it's a universal truth. Everything else is just a perception, opinion, you know, somebody's subjective realization or whatever, you know, which is truth for you, but doesn't have to be truth for the next person. So that's what I mean. So with this, I now lost train of thoughts, but yeah, with this nemesis and hubris, so when there is a strong attachment to certain, you know, like belief system or certain way of understanding things, then usually we are challenged with situation that will make us question things, or someone that you care about will question, you know, like, well, this is not how I see situation, and the crisis, then the crisis come, you know, the Virgo. So yeah, I now remember where I was going through that. So the level of suffering or pain is dependent on the level of resistance. So if somebody would challenge my belief system, my truth, you know, my perception, my opinion, right? And I am willing to take other people's opinion or feelings or something into consideration and understand that, okay, this is where they're coming from and it is their truth, you know, they're right. It doesn't have to be mine. I can see it completely differently, but I can see how this is the truth for the person and it's right for them. It doesn't have to be right for me. Then it doesn't have to be so difficult, right? You can just say, okay, I see you, namaste, you know, I will accept that this is your experience. I don't have to adopt it as my own truth. I don't have to, you know, like now suppress my truth, but I accept, you know, that it is what it is. And, you know, this is something that I became very clear about prior to this full moon, that this is something I personally really struggle with, you know, like to accept that, well, it is what it is. I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it. I can have an opinion. It doesn't have to be my truth. But can I accept it as somebody else's truth? And they have the right to have it without judgment, right? Because then we have with Virgo, it's like a lot of criticism, you know, and this is again archetypal, and it's again like, you know, is it really truth, or is it just a story being said about Virgo and crisis and perfectionism and nervous breakdowns and all that stuff? Well, you know, it is whatever we believe it is, right? For me, Virgo is a human journey, hero's journey, and everything it encompasses, which is pretty, you know, pretty much a lot. So with regards to that, then we have the opportunity to change things or be tied up to things, you know, keep judging things. Like, for example, I can give you a very good example, life example. Since we moved into this apartment, which is wonderful, you know, wonderful apartment, there are a few things that, you know, like we don't like that much, like, you know, it's ground floor, so there is not much light, but that's fine. You know, we knew this will be the case when we viewed it. But there is one aspect, which is the neighbors, that you don't really know and can't predict until you live in the place, right? So I can focus about everything else in this apartment that is like, okay, yeah, this is all good, you know? And then I can focus on that one aspect, which is a very noisy neighbor that watches television very loud, and then just keep complaining about it, even though I can't change the person, I can't change the situation, it is what it is. Perhaps this person is elderly, you know, hard of hearing, whatever it is. So that's what I mean. You know, like I said, this is something that I can confirm or confess or accept in myself, that yes, I struggle with this. I struggle with accepting something that I don't like, or my ego doesn't like, or is not in alignment with my truth, with my hubris. And I judge it because I don't want it to be there. I want to change it. But who am I? And also, in many cases, the things that we don't like and judge are actually the things that are there, well, and you know, probably all cases, to teach us something which could be the different perception. Or like I said to my husband, well, when we can be okay with this and like just completely ignore it, then we are ready for other things, you know. But if something this small is like making us really like take us out of balance and really irritates us, and like we give it a power to like ruin our day or our mood, then, you know, it's not gonna be easy when real shit is hitting fan, you know. So that's what I mean. So all these people and situations and circumstances which just come out of nowhere, like Uranus, you know, expect unexpected, when they show on your doorstep, and the first reaction is like, okay, I can't accept this, I need to judge this because I don't like this is, you know, what, not my preference, because based on the archive of the past, I go and identify this as something unwanted, so I'm straight away rejecting it and say, no thanks, not my thing. But actually, this thing is probably there for a reason, so it's just a matter of changing perspective. And that's the Sagittarius, you know, that's the Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. Like, yeah, you know, I always thought I was this, but now actually I'm realizing that, well, maybe I'm not as open-minded as I thought. Maybe I'm a pretty judgmental person. Maybe I complain a lot, you know, whatever it is. So that's what I mean. So this is all part of this full moon in Gemini. Like, what am I becoming more aware of, you know, when I'm now like, okay, well, let me look at my shadows. And yeah, you know, like yesterday, you know, and the things that were coming out of my mouth, and I have to accept this is part of me, this is also who I am, you know, this wounded inner child, you know, that is wanting attention and, you know, has all these stories to tell, you know, truth, not truth, doesn't matter, you know, it's just something that needs to be sat with, and we need to be present with, and then we can say like, oh yeah, I hear you, you know, but this is not your story anymore, and it's only you who can change it. So what is the story? And I mean, yeah, we're not yet with the full new moon in Sagittarius, which will be the seeding of the new story, but this is just perfect, you know, with the 13 degrees, as I said, you know, is the death card. Which ones of these programs, which ones of these like opinions needs to be transformed? Because, you know, like now with this not long ago Scorpio season, so many things came up to the surface, and like I said, the new moon was in opposition with Uranus, so I'm sure a lot of things came up to the surface, but there was all this water, you know, so a lot of things are moving, you know, a lot of things, emotions, like unprocessed things from the past, our past, you know, ancestral past, you know, the collective past, you know, all of it, everything is brought up, you know. This is what I said at the beginning of the year, you know, this year will be a year of flooding, you know, especially with Jupiter being in Cancer, right? Year of flooding, everything is coming up for clearing and releasing, and, you know, so it's no longer holding a charge and has the power to create a story of our life unconsciously that we don't want anymore. So that's why we have to recognize, like, oh yeah, this is where I'm sensitive. This is where, you know, this thing that is hiding in my mind that only comes up when it's triggered and stuff, it's still keeping me playing small. It's keeping me limited, you know, being in the box. So, you know, just to close this monologue, and I want to pull some cards. This full moon being in the square, you know, with the lunar nodes and Mercury as the ruler being in opposition with Uranus and Venus and Mars still both squaring the nodes as well, pointing to the south node ruled by Mercury in Scorpio post-retrograde, but still in his post-retrograde shadow. Things might feel very differently, you know, for you as they would have, you know, felt a month ago. You know, you might see the same situation, but understand it differently, because now we have more awareness. You know, Mercury is going direct, he's saying, okay, well, but now I felt a lot of things, right, through the Scorpio season, and now I understand it differently. It's not just a theory, it's a lived experience. Now I had the experience, so I can compassionate. I identify this situation differently than I did before, and then we can go all the way back to May and like, oh gosh, how many things happened, and I'm not the same person I was in May, you know, with that 0-degree Saturn in Aries. So yeah, you know, things are always moving, things are always changing, and now we are in Sagittarius season, which is a very fast-moving energy, right? It's the fire, it's a mutable sign. Sun is in the sign of Sagittarius, so that's where our focus is. You know, the illumination is in the sign of Sagittarius. So with the Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, a lot of things are becoming conscious to us through emotions and how we feel, and we have the opportunity to move through these experiences that are bringing these emotions to the surface of our consciousness very quickly, like especially when Uranus is involved, and you know, Uranus is the ruler of Pluto, and Pluto is currently the ruler of Mercury, and Mercury is the ruler of full moon. We have the opportunity and chance to move these things quickly out of the way, you know, like you don't have to hang in there, you don't have to hold on to this, it's not yours, but currently it's being embodied by you because it's unresolved, and all decks, you know, all hands on the decks, everybody's participating right now in transmutation of this energy. This too shall pass, right? This too shall pass. So yeah, full moon in Gemini, so let's see what it's going to bring with itself. It's the final lunation with Neptune retrograde in Pisces for the final time, because next year we'll have Neptune retrograde in Aries. Different, I mean, we already had a taste, but yeah, there's going to be a little bit different because it's not going into Pisces anymore. And yeah, next year is going to be a whole new chapter, and I feel, for, you know, intuitively, that the 2020 to 2025 was like about something, but this 2025 to 2030 will be something completely different. You know, the 2020 to 2025 was bringing up the things that we had to become aware of, to release, to let go of, whereas because the old structure, the old foundation, you know, 2020 to 22, you know, the master builder, it is not what the, you know, new world, what the new chapter for humanity will be built upon. So we had to become aware of it, you know, that these bones are gonna soon become dust. And now, from now, 2026 until 2030, I really feel that this is going to be focusing on this manifestation of the new timelines. And then after 2030, that will be a completely new story, new reality for many people, where the realities will truly be split and no longer potentially interacting with each other. But, you know, who knows what really is going to happen, and you are the creator of your reality, and you decide what you want to believe and what you want to focus on and how do you want to feel about anything. So let's just pull some cards and wrap up this reading. So I'm going to first pull the Queen of the Moon for the Moon. What is the message from the Moon for this full moon in Gemini on the 13 degrees? And we have protection. Protection, okay, something is also, I feel, you know, like, and maybe people resonate. I don't know how about anybody else, but I needed to sleep so much more recently. Like, I'm usually okay to sleep 6-7 hours, and I've been sleeping like 10-11 hours, and I really feel there is so much work being done when you're asleep, when you're in the sleep state, because that's where the soul is free to just roam and do whatever, right? Because when we are like awake, then we have to deal with everyday reality. Obviously, we move in through density, so things can't happen as fast. Pentacles, the earth, it moves slower. But when we are sleeping, the water, the air, being in the ether, being in different dimensions, things happening very quickly. So it's interesting, and this is 24, which is Pisces number, but it's also the 6, which is about balance, harmony. And you can see that there is a person sleeping in the nest, and the bird, which is kind of like bird, the freedom. Next year we enter into the year of the fire horse, which again, horses represent freedom, fire, fast moving energy. So there are things that are happening when you are asleep, and this is a full moon in Gemini, and Gemini again is the air, is a fast moving energy. Mercury is in the sign of Scorpio, right? And there is that grand water trine between Mercury, Saturn, Uranus conjunction, and Jupiter in Cancer. So there is a lot of stuff that's happening while, for example, yesterday, like I said, I had a challenging day, and, like all I can understand is what's happening, like, okay, I'm having these feelings, I'm having these thoughts, like what, but I don't actually know exactly what's happening. There are many, many things that are happening at that moment, many, timelines that could be weaved and mended, and past lives that could be reset and released and stuff. So that's what I mean, it might look as something, so yeah, this person is sleeping, that's great, good for her, but we don't really know what is happening at the time. So you might not be consciously aware of what everything is actually being done and happening, and just how much help is available, because we are being protected, like our human brain cannot actually understand and comprehend and compartmentalize what we can when we are not in a human body, because the spirit has no limits. It's Pisces, it's connected to everything. So yeah, so there is a protection, especially when we are doing this work, like connected to the spirit and weaving through the dream world. Because again, I'm thinking about dreams, visions, visualizations. We as humans, and this I feel like is not just one person, this is like a humanity. We are protected. The new dreams and visions and timelines are being woven. While there is stuff happening, we might think like, well, nothing's happening. There's just like all this stuff falling apart, but we don't know, because we don't have the bird's eye view, but the spirit does. The spirit was, so we protect it. Yeah, things are happening, and they will continue to happen. It's not optional. It's not like, oh, maybe it will, maybe it won't. No, things are changing, and they will change. And then it's the extreme. So okay, there could be situation that might feel extreme. Just like I said, for me yesterday, that was pretty extreme situation. But it is again fire. So these situations don't last long. As we know, even. Imagine like a tropical sea, like in a tropical place like Mexico, for example, when it's the rainy season. The rains are heavy, but they usually don't last long. There is a month or two when they could be all day, but usually the tropical storms, they come and they're really heavy, and then they pass, and then the air, gets cleaner and clearer. And this is a 34, so that's a number 7, which is a very spiritual card number, connected with Neptune again, and also it's the 7 is the Chariot. So things are moving quickly. It might feel that things are extreme, that there is a lot happening. Obviously we are ending this year, coming into the nearing the end of this year, number 9. Which is all about culmination, endings. So we might feel like, oh my God, there is so much happening. It's so extreme. Obviously with the holidays upcoming and everything, there is so much chaos and like pressure and blah blah blah. But there are things happening you're unaware of, and also things will pass quickly. And also another thing that I know comes with the description of this card is that we are, through the extreme, we are being made more resilient. So when, like I said, if I can become okay with noisy neighbors and just bunk it out and not be bothered and don't care, I'm ready for something else, right? But if I can't even pass this lesson, this exam, then it's like, well, the world is not going to be what you want it to be just because you want it. Not necessarily, unless it's your world, the world you're creating, but can't control the people, can't control circumstances in many cases. So yeah, There could be situations that are preparing us for the next step on the journey, and it might feel extreme. You know, like I said, this is full moon, plus it's in a square with the lunar nodes. This is not necessarily fluffy energy. You know, it doesn't have to be difficult, but it doesn't mean it's gonna be all fluffy. But there is a groundwater trine, so it's helping us to tune in and connect with our emotion and allow for the guidance from within, but also the surrender. That I know this is something that's been coming up for me so much in this past year. Trust, surrender, faith. Trust, surrender, faith. Having trust to surrender and faith that it is going to work out. You know, we are protected. Don't worry. We are heading somewhere. You know, the spirit is taking you somewhere. You know, also, like, if you think about this as your higher self, it's taking you exactly where you're meant to go. And yeah, it's 6 and 7. So we have a sequence there. All right, let's move to the sun. Queen of the Sun. What is the guidance from Queen of the Sun for the full moon in Gemini 2025, the final full moon of 2025? What is the guidance for the Queen of the Sun, making the square to the south node in Virgo? All right, let's see. Nothing is wanting to come out. Oop, okay, there was something that flipped. Boundaries, 39. 3-9, that's number 12, right? Which is again about 3-9 comes to 3. 12 is the hangman, but also 3 is the empress, and it's also about creation, co-creation, collaboration. Number 12, look at things from a different angle, different perspective. You know, it's the illumination of the crown. Nothing is what it quite seems, but boundaries. You know, and this kind of looks like an eclipse to me. You know, eclipse, we know that the next new moon solar eclipse will be the one in Aquarius on February 17th, right after Saturn moves back into the sign of Aries, and right before the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the anuretic 0 degree. So we have a woman kind of in a bubble, boundaries, which I feel again is connected to this, like, in a sense, extreme, you know, and these energies, and just like what I was sharing about the neighbor, if you create your own, like, yeah, you cannot control the external environment, but you can create the, like, a bubble of protection, where the extremes, you know, especially while they last, but extremes usually never last for long, they don't affect you in the same way they would you have not had strong boundaries, or would you not have been able to create that bubble of protection around yourself, where you're like, okay, there are things happening, yeah, a lot of these things are karmic, destined, however you want to call it. Doesn't mean we don't have a choice or say, but, you know, as a soul prior to incarnation, we said, okay, I'll be there for that. You know, so there are a lot of things that are happening currently that have to play out, you know, just like the emotions, they have to play out, they have to be felt, you know, the thoughts, the belief system, you have to become aware of them. How are you going to become aware of them if nothing triggers it? So there are things that have to play out, but at the same time you are protected. Your higher self knows exactly where it's taking you, you know, so that's about the trust, faith, and surrender. But you have also the opportunity to say no to things that you are not alignment with, or people, you know. There is like, yeah, there are things that we can't control, but then there are things we can, and it's good to discern which ones are which. So yeah, I can't do nothing about this, but I can put earplugs in my ear so I can record a video, you know. This is something that I have a control and power over. So having healthy boundaries and not allowing the external to affect you to the extent it would if you didn't have them, because there is a trust and faith that I'm being taken exactly where I need to go, and things are playing out and happening that I'm unaware of, but everything is in alignment with what needs to take place. And then at the bottom is will, and this card came up last time as well, having the will. Yeah, this is another number 7. You know, so again, you know, like I said, this card came out last time I used this deck. I believe that was the new moon in Scorpio, right? Will, you know, use your will, your free will, to, like, in a sense, influence your reality and or the aspects of it that are in your power, that are in your control. And because this is a full moon in Gemini, becoming very aware of what these things are. Where do I have a choice? Because in many cases we are in a situation where we might feel, well, I don't have a choice, but there are aspects of that situation where I do have a choice. I can choose, certain, like, how do I respond to this? How much time do I want to spend with this person? There are things I can't control, can't change, but there are some aspects of the situation that I do have a free will, or I have a power, so boundaries, use your boundaries, use your free will, to get through the whatever extremes, this month is gonna bring, because there is much bigger thing happening, much bigger theater playing out than the one that we are observing and experiencing, right? Okay, and then because it is a choice, because Gemini, right? Obviously in a traditional, interesting, because of course in a traditional tarot, the number 6 is the Lover's card, the choice, the Gemini. So I also chose the Cosmic Crossroads, which is, crossroads, where do you want to choose to go, because we are at the midpoint. So between now and June 14th, when we have the next Gemini lunation, the new moon in Gemini, which is where the cycle will reset. And like I said, at that time, we already will have everybody back in the signs we experienced this year, plus it will be the final lunation with Chiron in the sign of Aries. After that, Chiron is going to move into Taurus. So Cosmic Crossroads, let's see where we at. What are we deciding? Okay, oh wow, there are a bunch of cards that flew out. Okay, this one is Stillness. Okay, I'm gonna keep that one. Stillness, 37. Okay, let's see what else comes out. Okay, there is another one. Cherish, and at the bottom, Courage. To me that's connected with the, and one more. Openness, okay. Well, I guess all of these want to speak. So the openness is 27, which is number 9. And the final lunation, like I said, Pisces will be 28 degrees, the Aries one will be on 27, so beginnings and endings. Also 37, which is number 10, the Stillness. And then we have Courage, number 12 again, number 3, just like this one. Boundaries, having the courage, this time having the courage. And the final one, Cherish, number 7. So we have the same numbers, the number 12 or number 3, however you want to look at it, and the number 7. This is already a third number 7, 3 number 7. So definitely this is a lot about higher wisdom, about learning, about, Chariot, like becoming conscious of the unconscious and being able to navigate your reality, understanding both, like the Chariot on the card. He moves the swings telepathically, there are no reins, there is no like card in a sense, right? So we have the power to navigate our reality. Also, Chariot represents Cancer, so becoming aware of who we are, that we have that power, so with this Cherish, and she is like in the shell, right? With where the pearl is created, and you have the blooming, the rose. Cherish every situation. This is something that I've been advised recently, advice given to me, that be grateful for any situation that happening, in our life, which not easy, right? Especially if you're in the midst of it, not easy. But seeing that every situation that we are experiencing, that we're coming into contact with in our life, is to make us that pearl, the pearls or the diamonds, the pearls, they become pearls under grit, the diamonds under pressure. So any situation that we go through is helping us on our path to bloom, right? To become that pearl. And also the oyster is kind of golden, right? And she's holding something else, I think it's another flower. So what are we blooming into, and what situation we have to go through, and then have the opportunity, the courage to see differently. Also, you have like a kind of full moon and the heart set in fire. I know that there is a Mars trine to Chiron also going on in the, in the chart. So it's an opportunity. Mars is, where is Mars? Mars is in Sag still, right? And Chiron is in Aries. So trine. So this is a closing trine, so this is about the harvest, right? Closing trine. So it's the opportunity to reap the rewards of everything that we learned this year, the wisdom, the heart is set on fire. We are in Sagittarius season. What are we desiring, having sometimes feeling that we have no choice, having the experience that make us feel helpless, that I don't have a choice, but through the experience of what is unwanted, what is unwanted, like the pearl, like going through all that grit, right? What is unwanted, we have the opportunity to decide, okay, what do I want instead? What is the desire? And then have the courage, to go after it, to go after your rainbow. It sets your heart on fire. And in some cases, it could be through three of swords, the number 12, when you decreases is the number 3, and also having the, what is this, daffodils, the yellow, whatever it is, yellow flowers, springtime, setting us hard on fire for the next fire season, which will be the Aries season in springtime, when a whole new astrological year will begin with, Saturn, Neptune already back in Aries, already post their conjunction. Who do you want to become? What is setting your heart on fire to create whatever you want to create, illuminating the crown chakra, the number 12, the hanged man, connecting with our higher self, with the spirit, with the unlimited potential of everything we can be. And then we just choose the timelines that are matched to that, which again, easily said than done. I'm not in no way pretending that I know how to do it. And then openness, this is a 27, which is number 9. So openness to release whatever needs to go, openness to surrendering, because also number 9 is Aries, right? Not Aries, is the Mars number 9. So it's like through the ending, allowing something to end, because through the ending, we creating space for new beginning. Nothing just ends and that's it, Every time something ends, there is a new beginning. The energy cannot be destroyed, it just changes form. So as something ends, something new will automatically begin. So being open to surrender to the guidance of the higher power, to release and make space for the unknown, even though, again, it's not easy, because the ego will tell us million reasons and excusing and buts why it's not going to work out, because there is no evidence, there is no experience that it had, right? And then the stillness, 37, which is number 10, right? We can see like a portal here, like a gate behind which there is a universe. And I mean, even that, it's like a looking glass. So it's only in the stillness where we really can connect with the universe and unlimited potential of the all that is, of the void, like the black, the void, right? Where anything is possible, the quantum field where everything is possible, this is the portal, this is the gateway into that reality that we want to bring into manifested form. So having the openness to let go of that which is taking space, but it's no longer service, allowing ourselves to be guided, to surrender, to have the faith and trust. It's in something that is, it is, not above us, but it's something that we can't really, understand or identify. How can I trust something that I can't even see, how do I know that's going to work out for me? What if my spirit has, idea for me that actually I don't like, with the ego would say, I don't want to, I want to control, can I cherry pick? And sometimes it's not possible, right? So surrendering, having the courage to look at things differently, to allow for the heart to be broken, if necessary, to be set on fire, to seed the potential of the future. The spring, the rainbow will come. There is a rainbow after every storm, right? Also, there are these mountains, I don't know if that's Sedona or the, Australian ones, but in any case, sacred mountains. And and the pearl. The pearl of you coming into your blooming, right? Through all these experiences, cherish, and this is me talking to myself as well, everything that we've gone through, because it brought you where you are, right here, right now, and everything that you've learned through that process. Number 7, higher wisdom, higher knowledge, preparing you for this next chapter for humanity, the year 10, which is the portal, right? The year 10, 0 and the 1, the 10, right? Wheel of Fortune, 0, the Fool, the 1, the Magician, to connect with something that is beyond, to bring the unmanifested into manifested form, in vision, look through the looking glass into the unlimited potential of universe, which then can become your life, you know, if you choose it to, if you wish it to. But most of the time we're focusing on what we don't want, and we are being overwhelmed by feelings that don't feel good because they're familiar, you know, in most cases we are addicted to those. And then there is not much space for something else. And then when we try something else, the ego will fight it. So it's like, oh, this doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel natural. Probably it's not good for me. Let's just go back to the other thing. Or let's just numb ourselves, right? Let's not even feel nothing. So, yeah, it's the grit, right? Nobody said it was going to be easy. But we blooming, right? We all blooming. Or coming, like we are all on different stages of that process. All right, and the final card with the major arcana. The final advisement from the major arcana about the full moon in Gemini. Full moon in Gemini, what is the final message that we might wish to know? Okay, here we go. Wow, cool. We have 3 cards, very telling. So there is lovers, you know, the choice, having the opportunity to make a new choice. Moon, which is the Pisces, you know, the past is coming around, right? Is becoming conscious to us, right? The sun and the moon are illuminating to us, okay? These are the stories, these are the belief systems. We can choose again. And then there is death card, right? The 13, we already said, is the degree on which this full moon is happening. And this is the number 13, which is the death, you know? So the past is coming around to be reborn, so we can make a new choice. We can make a new choice to create. And here we go, the Chariot. We were talking about the Chariot, and here it is. The Cancer, right? And look at all these stars, you know, the potential of the future, the number 7, again, the number 7, the higher wisdom. So, yeah, the past is coming around, becoming fully conscious to us in, you know, not everyone's case, but more and more conscious, more and more clear, more and more aware. If you can't necessarily identify it, but I can feel it, you know, with the Mercury in Scorpio, I can feel it, you know, and things are happening quickly, right? Things are happening unexpectedly, couldn't see that coming, that call, that message, whatever. And there's an opportunity for these things to be reborn, right? To be transformed, transmuted, so a new choice can be made. New choice could be made to become someone else, to become the conscious creator, right? Where we are aware of both the conscious and the unconscious, the external and the internal reality, to create your own kingdom that you will rule through your like telepathy, you know, your energy, right? The power of your consciousness. You don't need a remote control, right? This guy doesn't have any remote control. He doesn't have any rain, right? He's got this thing, you know, I forgot what it's called, you know, but the Emperor has it too. And yeah, the star is connected to the star. He has the vision of the future, right? And this is like moon, you know, the high priestess connected to the intuition, to the kingdom of heaven, right? So that's pretty beautiful. But again, you know, that's all just a theory. Let's see how it's all going to play out. So cool. I'm going to end this reading with that. And yeah, so I'm going to upload this video tomorrow, released on Thursday, on time for the full moon, which is happening on Thursday night. As I mentioned, for some people it will be Friday morning already. And yeah, let's see what else this month will bring. I will hop on again to record something else. I'm just kind of free flowing at the moment, so you know, I don't have an exact schedule, but yeah, even though my Black Friday sale ended, still, if you are a Sagittarius or Capricorn, you know, you can get a 25% off all my readings if you're celebrating your birthday or coming into your birthday or just had your birthday. And if you already booked a reading with me, then obviously I'll see you soon. And if you just want to book a reading, just because, then that's available at any time on my website, moonlightsoul369.com. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful day, wonderful Gemini full moon, and I'll see you in the next video. Much love, everyone, and bye for now.